The COVID-19 pandemic is projected to push global debt to record $277 trillion by year's end. The world's debt to global GDP ratio is also expected to reach 365%. And as U.S. President Donald Trump continues efforts to block the transition of administration, President-elect Biden claims Americans are witnessing incredible irresponsibility. Our top story this morning, Prime Minister Chung Se-kyun has urged people to stay home and avoid gatherings and unnecessary outdoor activities as COVID-19 cases resurge in South Korea. The country reported 363 new COVID-19 cases on Friday, 320 of which were local transmissions and 43 were from overseas. This is the third day that there has been more than 300 new cases. The Prime Minister said on Friday that the current speed of transmission is similar to when cases skyrocketed in Daegu and Gyeongsang-buk-do province back in February. With less than 2 weeks until the college entrance exam Suneung, he promised the government would do its best to provide a safe test environment. Prime Minister Chung added that because there are hopes that a vaccine will soon be available, people around the world are dropping their guard. He stressed it will take a long time until enough people can get the doses, so until then, wearing a mask is the only prevention method. The global COVID-19 tally continues to spike, with many countries in Europe and the U.S. witnessing new daily record highs. Countries like Italy are now suffering from a severe shortage of medical staff. Our Kim Hyo-sun has more.
The novel coronavirus continues to spread rapidly worldwide with no signs of cases. It's been found that at least 29 members of Congress have tested positive for COVID-19 since the beginning of the outbreak earlier this year. This comes as 7 members of the U.S. House and Senate announced that they've contracted the virus during the past week. To prevent the further spread of the virus throughout the nation, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention advised Americans on Thursday not to travel during the Thanksgiving holiday. Officials stressed that all members of the public need to redouble their efforts to keep a healthy distance, wash hands on a regular basis, and most importantly, wear face masks. Many European countries are also witnessing a rapid surge in cases. Russia's total tally of COVID-19 infections exceeded the 2 million mark, with daily infections and deaths hitting new highs. Despite the rapid surge, Russian authorities have imposed strict rules for mask wearing instead of imposing lockdown restrictions across the country, as they did earlier this year. Amid the continued spread, the head of the Greek Orthodox Church has been hospitalized after testing positive for COVID-19. While Greece was able to contain the virus spread earlier this year, the country is witnessing a significant jump in cases, with over 3,000 daily infections being confirmed on Wednesday. Italy, which is one of the world's biggest COVID-19 hotspots, witnessing over 34,000 cases on Wednesday alone, is suffering from a severe lack of medical staff. Health authorities there have turned to NGOs to help by sending doctors and nurses, saying that they do not have enough medics to treat patients. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
The experimental COVID-19 vaccine being developed by AstraZeneca and the University of Oxford is said to be safe. Researchers say it triggers a robust immune response for all adults, including those in the high-risk age groups. According to preliminary findings of a peer-reviewed phase 2 trial published on Thursday, the study involved 560 healthy adults, including 240 over the age of 70. The experimental vaccine produced a similar immune response for adults aged 18 to 55 and those over 56. The virus is most dangerous to those with existing health conditions and older adults. The drug makers expect the results of this phase 3 trials to be available in the coming weeks. As hopes around the world grow for anti-COVID-19 vaccines, and with Pfizer and Moderna nearing emergency authorization in the United States, airline and cold container companies are working rapidly on securing cold chain supplies for distribution. Our Choi Min-jung has the details.
With Pfizer and Moderna's encouraging test results for COVID-19 vaccines, airlines and cold container companies are rapidly working to secure ultra-cold vaccine distribution. Vaccines from both Pfizer and Moderna require deep freezing. Pfizer's at minus 70 degrees Celsius, and Moderna's at minus 20 degrees Celsius. With strict conditions required by pharmaceutical companies in mind, airlines, including Air France, are gearing up to transport temperature-sensitive COVID-19 vaccines.
We are preparing everything to mobilize the maximum capacity, the maximum number of planes to transport the merchandise from point A to point B, where it is expected by the public.
Air France is currently preparing a test run on shipping dummy samples at ultra-low temperatures, potentially from an airport in Amsterdam. In the trial, the company will use dry ice-cooled boxes, which can carry 5,000 doses each. Due to the increasing need for such high-end freezers by airlines, cold container companies like Vacutech are seeing a spike in demand for their products.
We presume that we will be heavily involved in the global COVID logistics because we already are. We are currently increasing our production while trying to accommodate all needs.
In addition, demand for dry ice is also increasing dramatically as hospitals and grocery chains featuring in-store pharmacies are seeking to secure enough to satisfy demands. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
With COVID-19 infections soaring worldwide and numerous nations on full lockdown, the global economy is spiraling into a tailspin and beginning to drown in increasingly eye-watering amounts of debt. Our Choi Won-jung with the details.
The COVID-19 pandemic is projected to push global debt to a record $277 trillion by year's end. The Institute of International Finance published a report Wednesday titled Attack of a Debt Tsunami, which also forecasts the debt to global GDP ratio to reach 365%. The report cited a significant increase in borrowing by countries, companies, as well as individuals. Many governments are attempting to provide financial support for companies and their citizens, and more firms are scrambling for extra funding as their profits dry up due to the pandemic. For the U.S., its debt is projected to hit $80 trillion in 2020, up from $71 trillion the previous year. In Europe, debt has risen $1.5 trillion to $53 trillion. Among developing economies, Lebanon, China, Malaysia, and Turkey have seen the biggest increases in their non-financial sector debt ratios so far this year. The institute said uncertainty remains on how the global economy can deleverage from this situation going forward. This comes as the International Monetary Fund on Thursday released a report on G20 economies. The IMF said the global economic recovery is slowing as the countries battle resurging cases of COVID-19. The IMF managing director warned in a blog post that the economic path ahead remains difficult even with the medical solution, urging countries to cooperate to ensure the fair and swift distribution of vaccines when they become available. Choi Won-jung, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in will continue his multilateral summit diplomacy on Friday, taking part in a virtual APEC Summit this evening. He's expected to highlight the need for global efforts to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic and reiterate his call to maintain essential cross-border exchanges. Our senior Blue House correspondent, Kim Min-ji, reports.
President Moon Jae-in will reiterate his call to maintain essential exchanges across borders during the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation meeting on Friday. Held virtually under the theme of optimizing human potential towards a resilient future of shared prosperity, the 21 APEC member states will discuss COVID-19 response measures. President Moon will urge the participants to join such efforts as long as they do not interfere with quarantine measures in order to maintain global supply network and revive the virus-hit economy. He will also share South Korea's experience in fighting the pandemic and introduce its contributions to the international community, such as providing humanitarian assistance and efforts toward vaccine and treatment development. Another highlight for Friday's session will be the participation of U.S. President Donald Trump, his first appearance on the global stage since the November presidential election. Trump did not take part in the virtual East Asia Summit meeting last week. Attention is on what message he will give, especially with Chinese President Xi Jinping also part of the talks amid continued geopolitical tensions between Washington and Beijing. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The U.S. continues to struggle with a major post-election dilemma as President Donald Trump pushes ahead with efforts to overturn Democrat President-elect Joe Biden's victory. While the transition of administration remains at a standstill, Biden denounced Trump as the most irresponsible president. Our Lee Kyung-eun has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump continues to refuse to concede to Joe Biden, pushing ahead with his efforts to overturn the Democrat president-elect's victory. His latest strategy targeting the key battleground state of Michigan, the Biden turned blue. The White House confirmed Trump has invited a dozen of Republican legislative leaders from the state for a meeting on Friday. The move has been seen as an effort by Trump to convince the state's board of canvassers not to certify Biden's victory in the state. Prior to the invitation, Trump called two GOP members on the canvassing board who later sought to rescind vote certification. If Trump succeeds to convince the board, the state legislature will be called to appoint electors who will overturn the will of the voters. In response to a series of efforts by Trump to block transition of administration, Biden said Americans are witnessing incredible irresponsibility.
It's going to be another incident where he will go down in history as being one of the most irresponsible presidents in American history. It's just out of the, not even within the norm at all. There's questions whether it's even legal.
Biden also warned that incredibly damaging messages are being sent to the rest of the world about how democracy functions, echoing his previous remarks calling Trump shameful. He's also repeatedly raised concerns over how a delayed transition could disrupt his preparation for a COVID-19 response, while the country's death toll hit a record 250,000. And it is not just on the health front. Financial and business circles, including the pro-Republican Chamber of Commerce, are urging for a smooth transition of the presidency for the good of all Americans. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
The U.S. Treasury Department has imposed sanctions on two North Korean companies. The move is an attempt to further stifle the regime's weapons development programs. Our Lee Seung-jae has the details.
In a move aimed at stamping out North Korea's weapons programs, the U.S. Department of the Treasury on Thursday added two North Korean entities to its list of entities subject to sanctions. According to an update posted on the department's website, they are Pyongyang-based Korea Chalsan General Trading Corporation and Moknak Limited Liability Company based in the Russian city of St. Petersburg. The Treasury Department says both companies are engaged in construction of other civil engineering projects said to be involved in forced labor by sending North Korean workers to Russia. The department noted that both had engaged in, facilitated, or been responsible for the exportation of forced labor from North Korea, including exportation to generate revenue for the government of North Korea or Workers' Party of Korea. The companies are the latest in a long list of firms and organizations that have been sanctioned by the U.S. for what Washington alleges is an abusive policy of sending North Koreans to work abroad to earn foreign currency for the regime. Most of the salaries they make is taken by the regime for nefarious purposes. The sanctions freeze any assets the companies might hold under U.S. jurisdiction and ban American companies and individuals doing business with them. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Good morning. The weather has gone from early autumn to winter in just one day. It was a cold morning, and after the readings will also be 7 to 14 degrees lower than yesterday across the country. So we need to stay bundled up. And of course, the recent warm weather is making it feel even colder today. The cloudy weather will be replaced by sunshine as the day goes on, with highs in Daejeon getting up to just 9 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Well, that's about 11 degrees lower than yesterday. Gwangju is at 10 degrees. Highs, though, will return to above the season norms tomorrow, but there will be some rain earlier on Sunday, which is soar, meaning a little bit of snow according to the traditional calendar. But instead of snow, we'll get some rain, and after that rain, readings will drop even further early next week into negative territory in the morning. And we will wrap up November on a colder note than average. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's a wrap for us at the hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of the day's headlines at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and goodbye.